Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight, as advertised, it's episode 104. If we knew then what we know now. So, kind of the idea behind this is what advice, tips, lessons, things like that have we kind of learned over the course of our bushcrafting careers, if you want to call it that, that if we knew when we started, would have made the journey that much more easier or enjoyable or just better in general. And I mean, I've been asked this a couple times around my work and stuff like that. When I say, "Oh yeah, I do Atlantic Bushcraft and stuff like that," they're like, "Oh yeah, so what's any advice you can give in?" And then we get on to this conversation. And funny enough, that's kind of what spurred this when I was talking to you about it, Ben. Was somebody was literally sitting at the across my desk asking me some questions, and I'm like, you know what, this would be a great topic because we were chatting for probably longer than we should have been, as is our nature, of course. So, what's your thoughts on this, Ben? What does this all mean to you?
Well, there's quite a bit. The volume changed suddenly. I don't know if you did something or hit a button, but you got really quiet on my end.
Oh, I bet you I know what it is. It's my if anybody out there knows a little bit about computers, for whatever reason, mine when I start recording will automatically start adjusting the volume and turn it down, even though I have it turned off to allow apps to adjust volume. So if anybody out there has some hints for me, definitely send it my way. I've tried to research it, all of that crazy stuff. Never seems to work. I have to manually go in, turn it up, and leave the settings window open, or it'll just instantly knock it back down. So that's my rant. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Ben.
Did you move it up? Because you're still pretty quiet. I'm
Yeah, I
struggling
was
to
gonna
hear
say
you
it
on my
should be
side.
up now.
Just went up a little bit. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I guess all of us when we start doing this stuff, we we make the assumption that we need stuff that people tell you you do. And I think for me that's what this is really going to rotate around is every time you get into a conversation, and it seems more prevalent to me for people who don't do it a lot or who do it very occasionally, they come up with some very strong opinions on things that, oh, you have to have this or you can't do it, or you have to have. And it's really interesting because when you see the guys who've been doing it for years, that they don't use any of this stuff. Like a lot of them use a lot less, or not that they don't have it, not they don't that they wouldn't use it or haven't used it. It's just you don't need all kinds of expensive and gimmicky crap.
No, and I mean that's a very valid point. And I guess the way I broke this down, and my volume's continuing to drop in the background, so I apologize now. Um, but I've broken this down into literally four pieces of information I've gotten that has drastically affected the way that I go out and bushcraft. And honestly, one of them is right on your thinking, right along those lines there. And I guess they all kind of equal out to that at the end of the day. But for example, the first one I have up there, which because it goes right along with what you're saying, is the first piece of advice I got was take less, see more, which is exactly take less. Don't take all of the junk you don't need, because as much as I make fun of it now, and a light pack for me is 50 pounds, and I take a bunch of crap, I was worse. I was far worse. Every single piece of camping gear I owned would come with me when I went out, just in case I needed it. You know what I mean? I was that guy that I like my bag was swollen. I'd have two cook sets. I'd have a half a dozen knives. I'd have 7 or 8 different ways of starting a fire. I'd have a bunch of stuff I'd want to test. Probably never even take half it out of the package. And I'd go tromping off into the woods. And the
Yeah,
reality is, as you said, you don't need 90% of it. You figure out pretty early on what you need, what you like, what you use, and then you can pretty much go with that. The unfortunate part was, oh, am I louder than Ben now, Gary? Am I starting to balance out, or how's that going? I'm just gonna leave it, and whatever it is, it is. Um, but anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, you find out you don't need any of it, but a lot of people don't learn right away that once you know you don't need it, leave it home.
yeah. And the other one thing, here's one, and we didn't fall into this trap, but it was definitely discussed today. Like my wife was on Amazon and or I think she was on Facebook and she got one of the Amazon ads and she said, "Oh, this is really neat." And she sent it to me, and it was like a screen that sits on a tripod for having your fire when you're camping. And my first instinct when I looked at it is, "Oh, that'd be kind of good if you were camping somewhere where you didn't really want to, have your fire right on the ground. Maybe you're in a mossy or boggy area." And then I got thinking, that's 3 or 4 poles. That's the screen that's never going to come clean. That's restricting how I can build my fire. And I'm like, it's a gimmick. In the end, for me, it's a gimmicky thing. And those gimmicky things just take up space. Our biggest complaint generally is bulk. It's not the weight. 50. Honestly, like either of us, I think, would throw a 100-pound pack on and walk around, and we wouldn't really complain that much.
No, and to the point, like I said, my first packs minimum was like 100. That was minimum.
But bulk is what kills me. I just hate bulk. I hate the fact that it fills up my pack and I got no room for stuff that I want to take. So I've been looking for smaller, lighter, more compactable gear and trying to take less gear so there's less stuff to shove in there. Um, I do envy the ultralight guy who goes in with a 25-pound pack and that's his food, water, and everything. Um, I'm not there yet, nor do I know if I intentionally want to get there truly. But the end result is when you think about those guys and you're telling me what they're taking, is it really does prove that you don't need a ton of stuff to backwoods camp. And for true essence of bushcraft, you don't need much stuff at all. The essence of bushcraft, as we talk about this here, is to be able to make what you need in the woods. So, I mean, I think I could name a dozen things that me and you take every time that we don't really need.
Yeah, I still have a short list of stuff that's always in my bag, and I bet you I never use it.
Well, even stuff you use that you probably don't need to take. Like, do you need a fork and spoon?
No, and I think since you and I have been traveling together, I've been trying to get in to carving at least a paddle utensil out. I'm not so good with spoons to hammer one out in a real quick instance, but a paddle utensil, real easy to hammer out in just a few seconds while your food's cooking.
Oh yeah, and it's good fun. It's good practice to do stuff like this. That's the thing. Tent pegs. Honestly, like generally when I go into woods, I take a set of tent pegs. I take an extra set, but I don't need it. Like I know that worst case scenario, I might have to walk 5, 10 more minutes so I can get to something that I would prefer to use as tent pegs, like a small alder or maybe some willow or something that's the right size and strong enough. Spruce branches are horrible tent pegs, by the way. And pine ain't much better, but there's plenty of wood out there. There's plenty of options. Standing dead, whatever you can find, you can easily peg out a few pegs with. You don't need to take that. There's a lot of stuff that you don't need. You don't need generally a full tent.
No, no, not at all.
Uh,
And that was kind of my draw to hammock camping at that time was it's just a tarp and a sleep system, kind of all on its own. I'm still bringing
yeah,
my sleeping bag regardless, but instead of like a mat or some sort of something to sleep on, the hammock takes up less space, less weight, and the tarp definitely takes up less weight, less space than a full on. Well, most tents, unless you're getting into like the high end, ultralight, super packable tents.
I, to, to me, just the general comparison is the tarp and hammock system is generally about the same as an ultralight two-man tent for size and bulk. Um, but the other advantage to me is I find most places I go, I can set up my hammock in more spots than you can set up a tent.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about level ground. You don't have to worry about flat ground. Like if it's rocky and stuff, really doesn't bother you. You're suspended above it. Not saying that hammock is the best end all to be all. That's just one of the advantages I see to it. And just well the comments are popping up there. Christopher Level says multi-tool spoon-fork combo built into the multi-tool is my go-to. That's a perfect example. Like, honestly, a good multi-tool is probably going to cover the majority of the tools you actually need, next to maybe a decent saw or an axe, or both if you're going that route. But I mean, most of the multi-tools, I mean, mine has a small saw on it. It has a knife. I don't have the fork and spoon, but I mean, if yours does have that, I mean, that's like a lot of your stuff packed in there without needing all the individual pieces, which is exactly what this is all about. And then Scott says, a 25 pack isn't any fun. I could never get there, but then again, I'll never carry more than 50 pounds of stuff unless I'm pulling it in on a sled. And that's, once again, that's kind of circumstantial. If you have a sled to pull in, I tend to load incredibly heavy as well. Not that I've done a lot of sled camping, but like if I had the ability to pull it in, I can guarantee you I'd be back to my old ways of packing, like, oh, I'll bring a stove and I'll bring this and that and the other thing. But truly, at its essence, the whole take less, see more is kind of my go-to philosophy when I'm getting ready. If I don't really need it, like every piece of equipment I put into my bag, I take a second, I hold it, and I go, do I really need it? And I've been finding more and more, I set more and more stuff aside. And then I might do a second wave, and some of it comes back. But I mean, from the get-go, at least, I'm starting to thin it down a little bit.
So you Marie Kondoing is that what they call it?
I don't know, honestly.
Take each item, hold it. Does it bring you joy? If not, let it go.
Well, it all brings me joy. That's the thing. Every piece of equipment I have brings me joy on some level, and I'll use it at some point for some specific thing. I've myself convinced of that. But depending on what I'm doing, I always ask myself the question, do I need it? Like, you know what I mean? Do I need 2 cook sets? No. Do I need the wool blanket? Well, it's, 27 degrees out, low of 19. Probably don't need the wool blanket. But if I was, like, my old way of thinking was, I'd find a way just to strap it on my bag. I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. But you really got to ask yourself, will you need it? Is there a circumstance that's going to come along that you're actually going to need that item?
You know, if you do it right, and this is just a thought, you can probably do, especially for one person or each person, a one pot cook system complete.
Hmm.
Like one pot, you cook your meal in your pot, you eat it in the pot. That's it. Like that's the one thing you need. You don't need the frying pan, the pot, the plate, the cup, all this stuff. Like if you did it right, you can pretty well do it. Oh, you should probably call this beer.
You never give up the beer. Just saying. Wool blanket gone. That's just extra beer space. But
I see Gary also pointed. He thinks his hammock setup is heavier than his tent.
and there are, and I said that there's exceptions. Like you can get ultralight tents. I don't happen to own one. My tent is, I think it's like 2.5 feet long and probably 4 inches cubed. You know what I mean? But my tent is also a 4-person tent, and I keep it around in case Lily and Mel want to come camping. And if I'm going myself, I take my hammock. So.
And there's more ultralight hammocks, but you do have to realize with the hammock, it is supporting your entire weight. So if you're a plus sized individual, do you want the ultralight hammock? Because honestly, it's going to make you stay up at night wondering, is this going to handle it? But
Well, funny enough, the first time I slept in my hammock, getting used to all the creaking and groaning, I stayed awake most of the first night, knowing that my hammock is rated for something like 450 or 550 pounds. Like, it's good and rated, but I'm like, I don't freaking trust this thing at all. You rock a little bit and you're creak, and you're like, oh, is that the rope coming undone? But
yeah. Well, and I've seen the ropes you used on your original one. So.
yeah, they weren't great, right?
No.
Well, you never seen my original hammock. My original hammock is my Coleman that was out there.
Yeah.
The ropes are very similar, or if not worse.
But no, I really dissing one or the other. For me, it's comfort. I get a more comfortable night in a hammock. I've camped with a bunch of people who tried it and said, no, it's not for them. They like the ground. They like that solid underneath. They don't like the shaking. They don't like the fact they can't lay on their belly, or side sleeping can be a little uncomfortable if you're not. But, I curl up in a hammock and perfectly comfortable. So for me, it's more comfortable. It's more consistent
Hmm.
sleep across the board. I know when I go hammocks camping, I can sleep as comfortable almost anywhere. Where when I'm tent camping, God knows what the ground's going to be like. And I've yet to find an air mattress. Well, I lie because the hibernate I have has never lost air for me, but I know it has for others, so it's not perfect. But I've rarely found a hammock or an air system that didn't deflate after a night or
No, and I'm
during the
much the same. I mean, even when Mel and I go, I tend to pack real heavy when it's Mel and I, because generally we're doing like Hollywood camping. Um, and if anybody wants to know what Hollywood camping is, it's basically you stack everything into your vehicle and you really never go that far from your vehicle. Like we've gone camping at the waterfall, but honestly, where I parked the truck to the waterfall or where we parked, that's not that long of a walk to go get something you want or to run it back. You know what I mean? You're talking what 20 minutes in and out.
yeah.
So that's Hollywood camping to me. Some like last year, we set up literally beside the truck. If anybody's seen any of the pictures, you can see the truck in the background. The ATV's there. Like I had everything you could possibly want. And I have a queen size air mattress. This is where this is all going. And even though we blow it up and it's all good, they stretch a little overnight. And you all glamping. I guess that's the more exact term. Alex, thank you. Um, Anyway, the rubber stretches, especially if it's warm, and it was really warm when we went. The rubber stretches, and you always sag. So we went to bed on a nice, firm air mattress, and I woke up with a rock pretty much finding its way into my spine.
Yeah, no, I've often felt that. Um, Interesting that Alex mentions the bivy. So my hammock system actually can be set up similar to a bivy. Uh, just take the gathered ends off, pin the four corners down, and then just suspend the screen up the way it is, and
Hmm.
it's actually I think it's close to 10 feet long, so you have enough room with the ends not closed that you can actually usually shove your pack in there. I've never actually done it, uh, but I've laid it out just to see, and it would be quite good. Uh, but for me, I just prefer to be up in the air. Um, so what else do you not need? You don't need all the fancy fire starting uh, equipment that a lot of people seem to harp on. Honestly, you can safely camp all year on a single Bic lighter.
Honestly, yeah. If you wanted to, and one of my other things that I'll talk about here later, but if you want to challenge yourself, that's one thing. But if you think you need your ferrocerium rod mixed in with your flint and steel, mixed in with your magnifying glass, mixed in with a Bic lighter, with some waterproof matches, like you don't need all of that. In all honesty,
No,
like a good Bic lighter is going to get you a good constant fire, and
I mean
yeah,
this particular one is actually dead. I don't think it'll light fire, um, but yeah, you buy one of these Bic lighters at the dollar store. You pay $1, and you can pretty well start fires all summer long with it, and then just you know, it it didn't cost you anything. Spent $30. I spent more than that on ferrocerium rods.
oh yeah, easy. My big ferrocerium rod, the one you've seen that's like the size of my little finger and 8 inches long or whatever it is, I think that thing was like $30. I could buy
I
a
think that
case
was
of
about right.
lighters for that.
I got mine for Christmas, so I'm not exactly sure of the price, but mine's similar size. It's pretty big. It's pretty heavy, and I like it. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. But don't think you need it. You don't need these fancy fire lighting systems. Anyone can go camping with a Bic lighter. I would suggest taking a second one in case something happens to your first one. But even if you go with a ferrocerium rod, I still recommend you take something else. You never know if you lose, break, whatever.
Red Bear actually said that his way of thinking is two is one and one is none. So
Yes.
that's a pretty common thing to be said in the bushcrafting community.
Well, and my grandfather. So just for example, like the old guy. My grandfather, he used to take one of these. He'd wrap a piece of cardboard around it and then wrap it in electric tape. And he'd throw that in his pocket. And it would be tight enough that if it fell in the water, when he pulled it out, he could pull it out from the cardboard. It would be dry. It would light a fire, and he'd just shove it back in there. That was his fireproof light or waterproof, windproof lighter. Carried it everywhere with him. It was a great little system. Cost him nothing.
So once upon a time when I smoked, um, the little tinfoil packages that I assume they still do. When you open a pack of smokes, there's like a small one on top. You pull that off, and then they kind of sit in the larger tinfoil things. If you take your time, you can separate the paper from the tinfoil, and it remains sticky. You wrap the first two layers backwards with the sticky side out, and then you wrap the first two layer or the next layers with the sticky side in. You just rub it with another lighter, and you can actually make a solid, I assume it's aluminum of some sort, aluminum case for your Bic lighters. And after you smoke enough, this actually makes a watertight case. And I used to do that numerous times. Once, like I said, when I smoked and I had all this stuff available to me, now I gave up smoking. I don't do it so much. You can go buy a steel case for probably much less than I ever spent on cigarettes. But I mean, that's just another option too.
Oh yeah. So, you know, there. So if you really think, what do you need? You need a way of lighting fire. If you can do, even I think if you can do friction fire with stuff you can pick up in the woods, take a Bic lighter. I recommend a, something like some good, solid, dependable fire lighting system. I recommend you take some kind of shelter. Yes, you could build a shelter if you want to do that. That's great. Take a backup shelter.
Say
Take a
dollar store
tarp.
sharp will keep you dry. You know what I mean? Like a $4 tarp from the dollar store. Worst case, even if your shelter building doesn't turn out well, you're dry.
Oh yeah, and it doesn't have to even be technically a tarp. It could be drop cloth. It could be a shower curtain. It could be uh, a large garbage bag. Will make a decent shelter.
Yeah, a drum liner. A lot of hunting people, for those that do that, they recommend carrying a drum liner around simply because it will make an emergency shelter.
Yeah. So those are some great options for a shelter, but having something that you can string up over yourself in case it gets windy, keep the wind off you, it's pretty good. So here we have your your dirt cheap tarp, your dirt cheap lighter, right? A knife, um, a solid, dependable knife. Uh, and most knives, I would recommend a straight, not a serrated edge, but I mean it could be your everyday pocket knife. Most knives will do the job you're gonna need when camping. It doesn't have to be a fancy knife. It doesn't have to be a big expensive knife. But yeah, I highly recommend a good cutting instrument. I've heard as little as like some people using the little safety razors with tape wrapped
Mm-hmm.
around it. So you got that that might be going a little far for me. I feel there's a risk with that because there's not a proper handle. There's risk, uh, but a good knife in a sheath or something to protect you from the blade or to be able to fold it away. There's three things I think you need to go camping.
Yep.
Uh,
And
Food.
some sort of, I want to say sleep system, but just something to keep you warm. Be it a sleeping
Yeah.
bag, a blanket, and keep in mind, get yourself off the ground and stuff like that. Common sense, of course. We talked about this last episode. Will go a long way with the basics of what you need, but something to keep you warm. Like I said, blanket, sleeping bag, whatever the case may be. Clothing I carry over the years. And
You know
we've
what?
talked about the clothing thing too before, Scott. It's
Yeah.
always worth
Well,
mentioning, though.
the beauty is you can go to any thrift store and pick up a decent blanket or usually a sleeping bag in most thrift stores. It doesn't have to be the most expensive one. You're going in winter, you're probably going to want a better sleeping bag. Uh, I see mention of the Zippo. Zippos do work great. Um, uh, I what's this? The time case? It doesn't evaporate. Therm- I I have a bad problem with the Zippos. Make me give me a rash. I carry
Hmm.
Zippos in my pocket quite often. When I was younger, and I have quite the collection of Zippo lighters somewhere. Probably not far from me. And unfortunately, every time I put one in my pocket, it leaks. Not a lot, just enough to give me a rash.
I was gonna say I had one bad experience with a Zippo, and I kind of got turned off with them. To be fair, you kind of get what you pay for when it comes to Zippos, and this was not an expensive Zippo. We're talking like the $25 special, and I actually had it ignite in my pocket. So that just kind of,
Actual Zippo?
I think, but I can't remember. I was only 17 or so, so all I can remember is it was silver. And I thought it said Zippo, but maybe it wasn't a Zippo.
Well, there
Um,
was Robinson. I think Robinson is another name. But like every Zippo is interesting. A Zippo comes with a forever warranty.
oh yeah,
Yeah. You if your Zippo breaks, you send it back, they will fix it.
cool. No, this too okay. Full story. I don't want to get too far into it just because of our time, but when I was younger, high school, I cut a lot of wood. Like my family, foresters. I was junking firewood. I had it in my inside pocket with my cutting pants outside it. So I mean, it was hot. It was a hot buggerly day. I think it was like 32 or something like that. It was. I just remember it being miserably hot. And I went to have a smoke. Funny enough, and I pulled the cutting pants down to sit in the log pile and get some air going through me because I was only wearing like a pair of shorts or something under it. Anyway, when the pants came down and my hand went in, it just, my whole pocket kind of went, boo. And I had this nice little ball of flames. And I didn't get burned. Like it never did anything bad, but it always stuck in my head. And I was just like, no, no, I'm done with these. We'll go with the Bicks. But then again, I've heard people say that they've had Bicks blow up in their pockets. So I think it's
Oh yeah,
just
I've
extreme circumstance, right?
I've seen Vicks light up. The neat thing with the lighter fluid on a Zippo, believe it or not, I should not tell anyone this. I am not going to talk. Yeah, no, forget it.
Yeah. Better left alone. So anyway, uh, we'll glaze over that. We'll move on to the next one. So the next piece of advice I had on my list, stop and enjoy the surroundings. Which like it sounds dumb. I only use Zippo insert that has the O-ring seal, and yeah, see that's the thing. I remember this being a cheaper lighter, so it was either a cheap Zippo or a Zippo knockoff. But anyway, so yeah, stop and enjoy your surroundings. A lot of people get out there, they get focused on setting up their campsite, testing some gear, stuff like that. They don't stop and just appreciate why they're out there to do stuff. I mean, as bushcrafters, and we get out there more, we learn to do this. But the first going out, everybody seems to have blinders on. Like I'll take people out, they get very focused in on the things that are directly in front of them, and they don't really look at what's going on around them. And that's kind of human nature, but it's the one piece of advice if somebody could have beaten into me as like, a 14, 15, 16-year old would be like, stop, smell the roses, stop and enjoy your surroundings. That would be the one thing I would suggest. So mine looked like, without the embroidering and stuff there, but mine looked like that, but it was just solid silver.
Yeah, I have a few. I one with my initials on it. I got the infantry one from when I was an infantry soldier, and I have one that I probably should send back to Zippo. It's one of the mini ones, and it used to have.
Other way. There you go.
It
Okay.
used to have a ship on it, and it belonged to my father. So I have a few Zippos, and I do like my Zippos, but and none of them have the O-ring.
Well, now I have to go out and find a Zippo with an O-ring, because I used to love carrying a Zippo. I don't know how we got on an entire topic on Zippos, but that's why I love this podcast. It's so easy to deviate from. And that's why some people like us. That's why some people hate us, and that just is what it is. But yeah, I'm gonna have to go out and find a Zippo with an O-ring because I liked having my Zippo on me. I am like my EDC everyday carry consists of some sort of cutting object, some sort of fire lighting object, generally my paracord bracelet, and my multi-tool. You know what I mean? COVID's kind of screwed up the bracelet because they won't let me wear it at work because it's a soft surface. And of course, in my work, I can't bring my lighter or my knife, but it sits in my truck. And as soon as I get my truck, it goes back in my pocket, all that good stuff. But I've kind of just gone on to having a Bic lighter, and I honestly, it's not the same having a Bic lighter in your pocket as it is like a Zippo. Don't know why.
What? There's still the sticker on the back of this thing saying how much I paid for it at the Canics.
See, that's a great price.
$17.
The Zippo insert. Which is not bad for a Zippo. I think the cheap ones I see around here now are $30, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I agree. Camp chores are therapeutic, but I think that comes with time. First timers and people just getting used to it, they tend to hyper focus on them. Like, I have to get my tent set up in this certain specific way that I've seen online. I have to get my fire pit set up exactly like, yeah, I have it pictured in my head. And it's more as you gain the experience, unfortunately, that you can just be like, make the fire pit so it's safe, set the tent up, hammock up, whatever, so it's comfortable, and then kick back and enjoy while you're there. Like when Ben and I went to the waterfall, it was a beautiful sight. You could watch the waterfall. It was good fishing. It was in a little hollow, which made it kind of cold, which we found out, but it was nice scenery. Then when we went to that other place on the other side of the lake, I mean, it was beautiful. The boat ride out was amazing. Just seeing some of the
Yeah.
scenery and stuff on that. Whereas new people would just beeline it. Like, yeah, we're going to that side and it's just going to be hammer down, paddle over. Miss a ton of great stuff. The whole reason of getting out into the woods is to enjoy being out there, not to get there as fast as you can, hammer through some chores, and then race back home.
Yeah. I agree 100% on this. It's it need for me. It is all about just enjoying it when you. Okay, Red Bear just sent me a picture of some his basically his EDC, and I'm kind of jealous of his little sharpener he's got in there.
So, what's a time case or a time case? But the time case will not
It
leak.
looks from the picture he sent, it's like a almost a military style case, much bulkier that the insert fits in, and it looks like it would probably fit in a.
Okay. I know something else is coming up there with them, but I know exactly what you mean now. I had one of those windproof lighters in a case like that. And I used to carry it on the motorcycle religiously, and then somehow it fell out of the compartment on back, and I've never found it again. I actually lost a $200 flashlight along with that. Yeah, see, that I could see. That makes sense. But then
Yeah,
you
it
don't
has that
get the.
O-ring, which really would protect it if water or anything got near it too. So
Mm,
it's a two-way seal, really. Keeps the fuel in and keeps everything else out. I might actually look at getting one of those.
yeah, I kind of like
Because
the
I
idea too. Like I said, I always liked having my Zippo in my pocket. It's better than a Bic. It sits better in the pocket. I don't know. I just liked it better.
it's a ton of fun to play with, buddy.
Well, that's the only problem I see with that case. I played with my Zippo a lot, like flicking it open, closing it, doing some of the tricks. I'm not going to say good at it. I got entertained with it. Let's say that. So I know I'd be right back to that.
That's
Hey,
the first time I got a multi-tool. Um, and you mentioned multi-tools earlier. It was mine was the Gerber. Just in the military was actually starting to use them.
mhm.
And the fact that you flick over the wrist, the pliers used to stick out. Man, we wore out, literally wore out pliers just flicking them in and out.
That's like my Leatherman. It's same basic concept. It just flicks in and out. And man, I the first week I owned that, I thought I was going to break it. How much I was playing with it.
Yeah. But yeah, so let's see. What do you really know? You said we started off as what did we wish we knew? I think what I wish I knew what I truly needed to know. Um, and that is you don't need a ton of expensive stuff. You don't need the gadget stuff. You need to know, and this is probably the hardest thing to figure out, depending on where you're to, is where can you go?
Mm.
Uh, for Nova Scotia, for me, like I've lived in a few provinces over the years. Nova Scotia for me was the hardest place to really realize what is accessible, usable land.
Mm.
And for people from Nova Scotia, they look at me like I'm crazy when I say that. But you haven't lived in Newfoundland where most land is accessible and usable land.
Yeah,
Uh,
and that's a real good point. I mean, I never thought about it like that. Anybody coming in, it would be a little tricky to know where you could and couldn't go. I see that question come up quite often on some of the bushcrafting forums and Facebook pages. Like, how do you know where you can go to go camping? And as being from Nova Scotia, I'm just like, you walk out into the woods. But unless you know what woods to walk out into, you could be walking on somebody's property and get chased out of it. You know what I mean?
oh, yeah. Well, even the first time I looked at our fishing books, here for Nova Scotia, and it's like you can have so many fish between this bridge and that bridge, and after this point you can have any fish, but then over here you can have more fish. And I was like, oh my goodness, like how does anyone catch a fish here? Like it's just mind numbing how much information I had to know. Like every river and even spots on the river changes the rules, and I'm like, I just can't even follow it.
And hunting's much the same here because we divide everything up into sections, and in this section you can take a antler deer or antlerless deer. This one you have to get a license for it. This one you can't have it at all. I can see how it could be very confusing. Luckily, today's modern age, apps. There's a lot. I've just recently found apps both for fishing and hunting that you
Yeah,
just open it up. It takes your GPS location, tells you what you need to know right where you're standing. And that has actually come great, honestly. Because a lot of places I was hunting, I'd be like, am I technically in, zone 107, 109? Where the heck am I? You open up, it goes, boom, you're in this zone. This is what you're allowed. Perfect. But that wasn't available until probably the last 5, 6 years. So,
yeah. Out and about, Scott. There, he said, jealous you Northerners when it comes to this subject. Upstate New York is pretty good for this, as the states go, though. Yeah, and each province, and even I guess counties and areas within in Canada, the rules do change.
mm,
But much of Canada is very open to that potential to go into the backwoods and camp. Um, Northern Quebec and Ontario is pretty open from my understanding, and a spot I haven't really gotten to. And I think the further north you go, the general trend is the more and more crown land you have, and the more options you have.
mm-hmm. And that's the big thing. Is like if anybody's wondering, Nova Scotia, where to go camping, Crown Land. But how do you find Crown Land? Um, you can, I think it's, if you go to the novascotia.ca website, I think you can go into the natural resources section or lands and forestry section now, whatever it is, and they do have like our Crown Land maps hidden somewhere in there. So I remember seeing it before, and it'll give you the basic gist of what's Crown Land.
You can also look up wilderness areas, and that is a pretty good indication. It's almost all crown land, and it's crown land designated for uh, outdoors stuff. There are some rules on it. You can't set up anything permanent. You can't. You're not really supposed to cut any living trees. There is some stipulations, but usually it falls right into what we are looking for. So if you're camping basically no trace, and you're behaving yourself, and you're keeping your sites clean, and you're not staying for any length of time, no one's going to say much to you on most of the wilderness areas. Take a look at each wilderness area. I think there are some differences for each one, but you've got a pretty good chance with those. Outside of that, though, there's a bit more to be aware of.
Um, so yeah, I have another point on my list of stuff here. I wrote down 4 quick jot points, and I actually wanted to get your opinion on this one, Ben. I've been kind of saving it to the end because I think it'll generate some good discussion, hopefully with the people listening in the comments there too. Something that I've seen around, and it was told to me, and I didn't really appreciate it for what it was until I had the experience to know what it was. So hopefully we can explain this a little better. Challenge yourself, not nature. So to me, that means I see the wheels turning. So for me, that means if you want to challenge yourself, that's great. But don't, like, if you want to go out and you want to try making fires with friction fire, or you want to try sleeping with minimalistic stuff and things like that, that's perfectly great. But challenging nature with the lack of experience to do such isn't always the best idea. And I was bad once again for that as a kid. I wanted to go to the hardest spots to find, the most rugged terrain, the worst places to camp, and that's where I wanted to be. Which is fine and dandy in itself as long as you have the ability to do that. I took a lot of risks I didn't need to. Um, or I could have alleviated a lot of risks by having like lifelines telling people where I was going. Cell phones are a great thing now. GPS systems, coordinating stuff, leaving plans. There's ways you can alleviate this. I was bad at it when I was young. I literally would just throw crap in the truck, jump in the truck, and just drive for a few hours and be like, holy crap, that looks like a hard spot to get to. Guess I'll go there. And nobody knew where I was, except that I was camping for the weekend. You know what I mean?
I think this kind of falls into a sort of a similar thought I have sometimes. is, and this is kind of one of the reasons I kind of avoid like national parks and stuff more and more as I get more into this, is I don't like being told what I have to do. Uh, so if you've booked site 34 at Keji, the expectation is that night you've made it to site 34.
Hmm.
So you are, you're fighting against everything that's around you to make it to this goal. Uh, and sometimes that means you set your goals less than you'd like because you want to make sure you can make it. And other times you end up setting a goal that's so much that you push yourself to hate it. If you're doing real backwoods camping, you can set up wherever you want. Some days you're going to do 2-3 kilometers. Some days that's what you're going to get. Other days you can do 20. And I think that's the better time, is when you can really let your relationship with the land and the environment dictate what you're going to do. And it becomes much more natural, holistic feeling. And it feels so much better to know that you've gone in and you found a spot you want, you're comfortable, or you've gotten to the point where you, because there's no end of campsites available. Just find the one that makes you happy.
Hmm.
And that may be within sight of your vehicle, or it may be a full day's hike.
And just kind of coming off what you're saying there, I can remember I wanted to go camping out back of Warrenstown, which is not far out of Halifax's area there. And I thought I could bushwhack through this. This is when I lived in Halifax and I was still going to college. Um, I looked at it on a map, said, "Oh yeah, I can clear this amount in X amount of time. It's going to give me lots of time to get from A to B is so much time, B to C will be so much time, and then C to D, where I ultimately want to set up, will be so much time, and I'll still get there with lots of time left over." And the reality was, A to B, because of all the blowdown and stuff that was in there, it was like matchsticks. Like, you were climbing through and over and stuff. To go a kilometer took me 12 hours. Like, that literally, if I had crawled on my hands and knees, I probably could have made the same time. And a lot of times, that's exactly what I was doing, because I would go for a little while, and then I'd literally have to stop and take a break. It was hot. It was super rough going. And I mean, I was just challenging nature way too much. There was no way I was possibly getting to where I was or where I wanted to be. It changed everything as I was going. Once again, I didn't really tell anybody where I was, and there's super high chances of me not just getting hurt, probably getting killed. Because at one point I was crawling over stuff, and I looked down and realized I was like 8 feet in the air on fall and deadfall and stuff like that. Like, there's no way to describe how bad this was, like the blowdowns and stuff. It was right after Hurricane Juan, so like 2013 ish area, I think that's when that was. And it was just
Yeah.
like complete crap.
Actually, Hurricane Juan happened like 15 years ago.
I honestly don't have a clue. I took a guess, man.
It was one of my first years at IMP, and I've been there for for 18 years now. Speaking of which, um, this is our 2-year anniversary.
It is too. Episode 104. Or at least it's
You
been,
just lost by. You didn't even notice.
never even noticed. I wouldn't have noticed until the end of this. That's actually kind of impressive all on its own. We had our 100th episode 2 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago. Holy crap. And on that note, Alex is here. He actually managed to get his t-shirt, eh?
Oh, did he?
He did. If you give me 1 second and I don't screw this up, which is possible, I could do that. Nope, not that one. We want this one? This one. Alright, that's not working right. Just give me 1 second here. I do have a picture of it. There we go. Okay, so there's Alex in his brand new t-shirt. I did ask his permission to be able to show this picture.
Sweet.
So he got his
He'll be the
t-shirt.
talk of the town now.
And yeah, now he's styling, looking sharp. That is the 100th episode special t-shirt that we made specifically for the 100th episode, if anybody that was tuned into that. If you do want to get your own swag, some shameless plugging here, you can bounce over to our website or store.atlanticbushcraft.ca. We do have some t-shirts and, decals and things like that up for grabs as well. But yeah, just kind of neat while we were talking about that he was actually able to send us a photo of that. I thought that was kind of neat.
It's awesome. I have the receipt for the shipping on my table. I looked at it yesterday. I said I should check and see if that where that is, if it's been delivered yet or not. I hadn't really honestly figured out how to track it.
Well, no need. He has his shirt, and once again, thanks Alex for sending us that, and congratulations on your shirt once again, man.
That's good. I'm glad he got it.
So, jumping back on topic, I had one more point, and funny enough, Ben, it was you that taught me this point.
Uh-oh.
No, it's a good one, and you probably know what it is. I see the wheels turning. Are you going to take a guess, or you just want me to say it?
No, say it.
Enjoy your food.
Yes, of course.
And I mean, that's been a life
food.
changer to me in the last couple of years, because once again, old habits. I always went in with like gritty food, oatmeal, rice, stuff that would sustain me, yeah. But it was never really great. And I tell the story a lot. Ben and I went camping the waterfalls first time we went out. I'm sitting there eating oatmeal with a handful of nuts and a piece of chocolate, and I glance over, and this guy's like cracking out the scrambled eggs with bacon, and I'm just like, the hell am I doing wrong? And ever since then, I'm like, no, like I'm going to enjoy my food. It was amazing how once I took
And you
that.
realize every time you camp with me, I've upped the game.
Yeah, I know, I know. Last time, I still talk about the turkey, as anybody that listens to us knows. I don't think we'll ever top the turkey, honestly, but
Oh, pig roast.
oh man, we should we should go camping on a beach and do Hawaiian roast, where we dig it out, make the fire, the coals, bury it. Well, small pig, you know. We'll
Yeah.
be reasonable. I mean, that would be pretty awesome.
See, see, I just got to keep upping the food game, and then you're just. But no, you're out there to enjoy yourself. There's no reason, in my opinion, to go out there and suffer. You can. It's up to you. If that's what really turns you on. Some people like to suffer. Uh, by all means, I'm not going to stop you. But there's no need to suffer when you're in the woods. In fact, it can be the most enjoyable thing because food tastes better in the woods, anyways. And if you cook good food, it just tastes awesome, and it makes the trip. It really does. So, when you are planning your trip, plan a good meal. Take the steak. Take Take the
Bacon.
meal that takes a little bit of prep time. Do what prep you can at home. Set it up, and you can really, really love it. Oh yeah, Gary's another one, right?
Yeah, with the dehydrating meals. Like I always had a dehydrator, I dehydrated a few things. But no, it wasn't until that like eye-opening experience, and literally that's what it was. Because I can still remember to this day, I'm like hunched over my GI cup eating it, literally thinking, "Man, this is bland." And I glance over, and you're like eating like a king, literally like eating like a king. I think you had the Baby Bell cheese going with it, and you had the pepperettes that we were trying to fish with, and I'm like, man, this is just all wrong. This is all wrong. And ever since then, the first, like, it's not the first thing, but once I get my gear, I go, okay, what am I going to do for food? And instead of being like, all right, I'm going to, pack my 2 cups of oatmeal with my 2 cups of rice. I know that'll get me at least a week. I won't eat well, but I'll be like, instead of that mentality, I'll go, all right, throw a cup of rice at the bottom of the bag. Now, what's going to taste good in the woods?
Yeah.
And you know what? That ready cooked bacon is amazing. You put me onto that. Uh, Scrambled eggs, though I haven't done it yet. Still great idea. You put me onto that. Uh, like there's all these little things you can take out that make the meal so much more enjoyable. And Ben's right. A good tasting meal at the end of a long trek and setting up, and you've went through the day and you're sitting there and you're eating like a king. It is just amazing in the woods.
You, picture this stuff. You're going in. You got a full day planned. You're say you're it's a big hike, or you're hiking, or you're canoeing, and you're portaging, and you've got 5, 6, 10 more kilometers to go, and you're already exhausted. But you know that when you get this camp, you've got your steak, you've got your salad dressing, or your big baked potato, or whatever it is you're planning. This is a meal that you're looking forward to. it gives you that drive to keep going. You're like, this is going to be so worth it. I'm going to walk these kilometers. I'm going to pull this boat. I'm going to do this. When I get to camp, I'm cooking up this beautiful meal. And it makes that journey better because you have a goal. You have a goal and you know the reward is awesome.
And I completely agree. Like I said, I guilty. Old habits die hard. I always just went with what I needed because, you know, I'm going out in the woods. I want stuff that lasts. I always thought, well, you never know how many days I'm going to be out there. If I start like hot dogs. Hot dogs is a staple food for a lot of people going out there. And I've always been like, well, hot dogs could rot or they'll get slimy. Screw that. Freeze them, throw them in your bag. Just make it the first thing you eat if that's what you want. If that's what you want is hot dogs, don't talk yourself out of them. Like the steak we cooked, it was just frozen. It was the first thing we ate. The first night we had a steak. It was amazing. It was great. And then the next morning I got stuck eating oatmeal with stale nuts and half melted chocolate. So I mean, it's
And you know what? The worst thing is if I hadn't had that egg, like that scrambled egg with bacon and all that, you probably would have thought you had a great meal.
yeah, that's the thing. I was literally thinking to myself, it's a little bland, but that's it. I wasn't thinking like, oh my god, oatmeal again. It's just, it's a little bland. But at the same time, it's like at least the chocolate adds some flavor. And then like I said, I literally glance over to friggin' Chef Ramsay over there, and I'm just like, well, all of a sudden this tastes like dog food.
Sorry, buddy.
No,
Can't
no,
help
it was a good life lesson, and that's the thing. If I hadn't known that before, it really would have changed how I took food for the last several years. Because you're right, there is no reason not to enjoy your food while you're out there. It makes the experience that much better. I mean, you are expending a ton of calories. You are doing a lot of work. You might as well enjoy a good meal.
Oh yeah. Um, I think the other thing, this is probably the last point where you can do it, is more often than not, I tell people about the camping trips I do and the things I enjoy, and the first thing out of their mouth is, I could never do that. That sounds too hard. I'd be miserable. I'm going to be cold. Everyone comes up with all the reasons they can't do backwoods camping. And you know what? All you're doing, and I hate to be that guy, you're lying to yourself. Anyone can do this. If me and Robert can do this, you can do this.
Yeah, I was gonna say I am not an athletic person per se. Like I'm a guy that's dang near 300 pounds. I think I'm like 272 or 276 or something like that. I'm a bigger dude. I can still walk my butt through the woods, drag a pack, have a good meal, now that I've been told to do so, and still enjoy being out in the woods. I mean, saying you can't do it before you ever try is literally putting the cart before the horse. At least give it a try. Maybe not on your own. If you are worried, find somebody that goes out and does it. Like Ben and I. If we're heading out and you want to try it, give us a shout. If we can meet up with you and get you out there, we will do everything in our power to ensure that you have a good time. And anybody that really enjoys it will be very much like. They'll try to make it fun for you. They'll try and pick some place that's not too hard. They'll try and make you have a good time because it really is a lot of fun.
Um, yeah, and like you said, I camped when I was 330 pounds. I camped when I was 180 pounds. I've camped everywhere in between. I've enjoyed it. I have larger friends who love to camp. I have smaller friends that camp. It really, it's not size. It's not physical fitness. I know I've camped with people with back problems, knee problems. There's a way to get out there for absolutely everyone. Uh, it's That's not your limiting factor. The limiting factor is your willingness to try.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're willing to try, you'll find the way to do it, and it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding to wake up in the morning and hear the loons, to see the fog on the lake, to see the scenes, to just smell the air. There's so much to it, and it's just an amazing experience to get out there and know that yes, anyone could do this, but no, not everyone will. Most people will never do this, not to the level that we do it. And there's something empowering about that. There's something that when you do that, you wake up and you see that and you think, I did this. And I think it's because it connects you with
it detaches you from
generation.
society, technology, and all the stuff that's going on now, and reconnects you to your roots. And
Yeah.
for me, anyway, and where you came from. I mean, we didn't always live in these big fancy houses with big old computers with fast internet and cell phones that literally have more in this cell phone than my computer did 10 years ago. Like, getting back to basics, as the title of last episode, it's kind of neat to have that self empowerment, as you said, to say, yeah, I can do that.
Uh, right, when we were young, it was the whole reason we went out into the woods was to cook something over the fire. And he's telling the truth. We would come up with excuses to go and just cook a meal up in the woods. So you take your fishing rod, and you take your whatever, your burger or whatever you were planning on cooking up there, and you go out and you go fishing for the day, and you have a campfire in the woods, and you'd eat, and you know just you felt like king of the world, you really did. Uh, and that feeling never left me. I still feel the same when I was 12 and camping in the woods and doing this stuff as I do at 42, 50, whatever I happen to be at the time. It has
Give it a
never
range
diminished.
in there. No, and I agree. I can still remember. I don't know if it was the first time, but the first time I remember was rabbit hunting out in the woods with my uncle. Uh, and we were just out, 22 rabbit hunting. I was probably only 7 or 8. I know, probably young, but whatever. And that's what we did. We went out, we hunted rabbits for a little bit, and then we were like, oh, okay, well, it's been a few hours. Why don't we stop, make a campfire, and have a bite to eat? And the first thing I was like, you can do that? And I mean, I knew about it. We would did little campy things, but not to that level where we had been out most of the day and then decided just to pop a squat where we were and make a meal. And it still plays into my head. Making the fire, sitting down, heating up a cup of tea. I think all we had was some sandwiches and a can of Spam or something like that. And we just cooked it over the fire. And I was like, this is the most amazing thing ever. And that's kind of just where it ran off. I mean, don't get me wrong. Dad, Gramp, they all took me out. We did little camping things, but it was always very close to home. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This was the first time I was like deep, or what I thought was deep woods. I was probably still only 5 kilometers from home, something like that. We walked over a mountain in behind the house, just where I grew up, Barney's River. Anybody knows the area, and we kind of went up over the Browns Mountain area, and it was just I was like in this whole other world to begin with at the first of it, and then to have a meal and survive in that was just amazing. And like you said, that feeling never goes away. Every time you're sitting there staring into the flames, eating something, going, "This is just literally one of the best feelings out there."
And Scott's just said when he's camping, he's focused on what he's doing, and don't worry about the dumb stuff. Camping keeps him focused in the moment at hand, and that's very true because I feel that most of us are feel that we're stuck in this rat race, and you have to keep up with everything that's going on. And it's technology and it's the news, and we're inundated with so much information that most of us are we're not realists. We're actually just completely physically, mentally, and socially exhausted. We cannot keep up with what we're expected to keep up with. I don't think people can. And when you're in there and you're just doing that camping stuff, you're hiking, you're carrying your pack, you're setting up your meals, you're setting up your, and you have to slow down to do this stuff. You can't rush at this stuff because it doesn't work. When you slow down and do these things, you you catch up to yourself and you actually can can clear your thoughts, and you come out more relaxed and more relieved of the stresses than you anything you can do at home. Like you just can't beat it. Like,
And I guess to add to that, my 2 cents is the relaxed feeling you have lasts longer than anything you did at home that would relax you as well. So, like, if you take a couple days off work and you just chill around the house, you get relaxed, things are good. But basically, by Monday, the end of Monday, you're kind of wound back up again. You're back into the rat race. You come out of the woods after being in there for like a week, it could be like 2 weeks, a month before you're really starting to get hammered down with stress hard again. You know what I mean?
yeah,
We're both getting a lot of dings there.
I remember one time I put in for a vacation day, and work must have forgotten. Anyways, I'm in camping, and all of a sudden I get a text. Are you coming in today? I'm like, no, not at all. Literally
No,
still in
wasn't
my
planning
tent,
on it.
still in my tent at work. In the woods, and I get a text. Are you no? Yeah, that was awesome. That was probably
Should we slap that on a shirt,
catch
Ben?
up to yourself.
uh, what do we call that? A bushcraftyism? You catch up to yourself? But it's true. You very much do. Like, it kind of. I always tell everybody, like, if they ask me, oh, what are you doing this weekend? I don't say I'm going out bushcrafting, I'm going out camping, even though that's what it is. I tell people I'm going out to reset. What do you mean? I'm going into the woods to reset. Well, what does that mean? Well, you don't have an alarm clock. You have no expectations of when to get up, when to go to sleep. You just do everything with nature. When it gets dark, you wind down. When the sun comes out, you wake up. Like, you reset yourself. You find yourself. You catch up to yourself. Everything just kind of becomes a little bit more harmonious. Harmonious? Don't ask the dyslexic what words are. That never works out.
Whenever I go camping, I usually have a plan. I'm going for 1 or 2 nights, or whatever the length is. But I always have in the back of my head that I'm going to stay an extra night or two. It's always a possibility. I'm always fully aware of it, and it's if my work ever hears this stuff, might get a little mad at me. But the fact is, I've always kind of have it in the back of my head that I might not make it out that night. Like, it is. Sometimes it's, but generally, yeah, I get the stress relief. I get it, and I'm ready to go back then. Not that I want to, because I do want to stay. I just think I'm ready. Like, I have reset now, and I've processed a lot of the stuff I have to, because there's a lot of stuff that just gets driven at you. And it's not just work; it's everything, and that's how you get away from it. It's you know, we talk about taking our cell phones and we take them as tools. Yeah, I think it's kind of important to shut down a lot of your notifications and your other stuff that comes through, because you don't need that stuff when you're in it.
No, I turn my connection off. I turn it on every now and then, give it a couple minutes to see if there's a text message or something that came in case something important happened, then I turn it back off. It goes on airplane mode.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Check and make sure the wife's still okay. She doesn't need you. Check and make sure that nothing serious has happened. Yeah, that's fine, but you don't need to be under surfing Facebook to see what somebody had for lunch this morning. Just let all that go. It's still going to be there tomorrow, next week, next month. Doesn't matter. Uh, that's your time. That day can't be still better than a good day at work.
and it's
It
true.
very much is. I'm not sure there is a bad day at camping. Is there bad days at camping?
I've had a bad day of camping for me is a day where it rains so much that you can't get out to do anything. But what you can still do is kick back and listen to the rain and enjoy the rain. You know what I mean? So is it really a bad day? Not really.
Absolute worst day of camping you can come up with is still the greatest story you're going to tell for the rest of that year.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I was gonna say, the worst day I ever had camping was a hurricane hit when I was out, and I mean it was a battle all night to try and keep everything from blowing away. But I still like get a few wobbly pops into me, and that story will come out, and it was a blast. So
Yeah.
her backup camera, and that's much like us, Alex. Our phones kind of become our cameras. If you've seen any of the videos we do, we shoot with our cameras. I got a camcorder. I mean, they become tools. Like Ben said, they're nothing more than a tool, and a tool that keeps us connected, but only for the short amounts of time we need to be connected.
Uh, I've used the big things I've used my phone for: identification of plants, GPS, camera, uh, and it is still a communication device, especially if we get separated or whatever. Like, if me and you went and we had to go 2 different routes or whatever, I would still use that to just like send you a message, like I'm back at camp or something like that. Those are the main things. So a reference you can keep a ton of books on your phone, and it's available. It's also a great flashlight.
Yeah, yeah, I've been guilty of using mine for a flashlight quite a bit. But yeah, I think that's for me anyway. That's the majority of what I had in mind. The once again, just things that if I had known a little better starting out, probably would have made it. I'm not going to say more enjoyable. Yeah, it would have made some things more enjoyable. Not that any of it was bad. I just would have appreciated it more, I think is where I'm getting at. I enjoyed all of it. I don't think, like you said, I ever had a bad time. That includes sleeping in the hurricane, having the snow cave collapse on me, getting stuck up in the Cape Breton Highlands. All of those things, although not great experiences, were still fun. They were still adventures. I still talk about them with a smile on my face. So,
Tell you one miserable thing: losing your shoes.
yeah, that would get old fast. That would get old very fast.
We were walking up a river, and my shoes. We were swimming, and my shoes fell in the river, and they went downstream, and I never did find them. And I had to walk the last 3 or 4 kilometers out barefoot, and I am not designed to walk barefoot.
Now, you know what? Melissa loves walking barefoot when we go camping. She says we just got to slow down. Says it reconnects her more to the ground and stuff around her, makes her literally slow down and appreciate stuff. I'm not a fan of it. I like my hiking boots and just tromp wherever the heck I want to go. But Mel, the second we get on campsite, shoes come off there and go back on until we're ready to leave, which is her thing. That's just how she does it. I mean, if she likes it, all the power to her. But some people do like that.
No, I wish I could. I really do.
The only other
So
bad experience I can think of that didn't happen to me, but I could see it being a bad experience is once again in the younger years. Me and a few guys went out camping not far from Indian Lake. And the first one to, let's say, fall asleep, maybe unwillingly, but he was on his air mattress, and the four of us decided to push him out in the lake. And we thought it was hilarious. We expected him to wake up, and then we all kind of fell asleep and woke up the next morning to him screaming probably a good, oh, I don't know, 500-600 meters out in the middle of the lake. So that was probably a bad day for him. But it was hilarious. It was hilarious for us. I wouldn't recommend doing that to anybody that's listening. I mean, there's dangers involved there that just don't necessarily need to be done, but it was funny. So.
Once you head up north, you still have to turn off your connections already not connected.
And you know what?
I,
A lot of places we go, you'll lose connection.
yeah.
So.
But you gain a connection that's much more powerful than the internet.
You
You
gain a
really do.
connection to yourself and the world around you. Which sounds
How
sappy, but it's
cliche.
true.
Yeah.
But
Anyways, we've killed our hour,
we did.
as we are wont to do. Um, I think we covered a lot of topic here. I think that this conversation definitely could go on for quite a bit. I think just because of some of this conversation, something that came to me, uh, probably a good future topic is going to be what are some great apps to throw onto your phone for
Wow, that
camping.
is dark. Yeah, that's a good topic, and you and I have talked about it in the past. And just to kind of confirm while everybody's listening, now that fire season's coming up, if anybody is wondering, it's March 15th. Fire season officially starts back in Nova Scotia. We do have a guest coming up not long after fire season opens, which would be the chief of Marigamish Fire Department, Paul Schnurr. If you have heard his name, he's been in the fire service for 30 something on years, as well as he works in you know what? I'll let him tell his own qualifications when he comes on because I don't know what he wants to get into or not. But anyway, he does have a lot of specialty in forest fires. We'll go with that, and the science based on behind them. So we're gonna drag him on. It might be a good episode for people to come in if they have questions about some of the fire science back there and why we're not supposed to have fires at certain times and why we can have fires at certain times, and none of it seems to make sense. He will literally give you answers that make sense. Paul has this great knack of being able to explain things in terms that make it very easy to understand, and you'll always leave way more knowledgeable than you went in with Paul. Probably one of the most informed people I have ever met in my life, and a super nice guy to boot.
All that and a bag of chips.
I'm trying to polish him up pretty good because technically he's my fire chief, and you never know when I need a promotion, right? So, but not just because he's my fire chief. He does have a wealth of information. And yeah, I'll let him tell his own qualifications when he comes on. And like I said, that'll be sometime around when fire season starts because I think that'll be the most appropriate. And we can chat a little bit about that after this too.
Dave, I really remember that trip. I think of that a
But anyway, I think
lot.
that's it for me tonight, Ben. What about you, bud?
Yeah, that's good for me.
And I guess just yeah, happy 2 years. Though we didn't make a big thing of it, 2 years is pretty kicking, man. Did you think we'd make 2 years?
Ah, not when we started. I really didn't know what to expect from it. But 2 years is kind of surprising when I think back on it. Uh, that's a long time for us to stick to something, and it's really maybe not grown in the numbers as much as we would love to see. Um, but I'm sure it's going to come. Like we enjoy it enough that anyone who watches, I think they realize that. But it's become a huge thing for us. Like, I've labeled it on my vehicle. We have cards now. Uh, when we go to buy things, I know both of us think about it. Like, how does this affect our podcast? Can we use this on the podcast?
Mm.
You know, uh, it's become a part of our life, and that's kind of exciting and different in its own way, right? So I expect that there's probably at least another 2 years in this.
As long as people keep listening to our ramblings, I am willing to keep going until they tell us not to do it anymore. So, and it's the internet. I think there's a place for everybody, and I think, like you said, numbers maybe not as grown as much as we had hoped in 2 years, but I'm still happy with where we're at. And everybody that's in the comments here now, you guys make this for us. Everybody that's in there, some of you have been long-term listeners, like literally around since the first episodes, and that's awesome. We love hearing from you. We have a good working rapport, I think, Ben and I, and we have a great rapport with the people that actually stay on and chat to us in the comments. They always have good input. We have some laughs, and as long as that keeps happening, sky's the limit.
Well, the fans we have seem to be extremely loyal and extremely involved. So, I don't think you can ask for any better.
No, and honestly, I would rather have like the 15, 20 dedicated people that we have than thousands upon thousands of people that, oh, they clicked on and then never come back.
Yeah.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
100%. I I would rather do this for 10, 15 dedicated listeners uh, than 1,000 occasional listeners that occasionally comment, because that means it's not the same. So everyone that listens, you contribute more to this than you will ever know, uh, and we really thank you for it.
No, I completely agree. Like I said, I don't think they. We hope you know how much we appreciate what you guys do for us in this journey. Because, I mean, ultimately, Ben and I can start up a video conversation and ramble on for hours and hours and hours and have a great time. But knowing that somebody out there is finding it interesting and honestly listening to your guys' input is just amazing in a way that you can't even begin to describe other than just thank you. So, anyway, that's that.
Hey,
Have a good night, everybody.